Josh Blakesley, welcome to
How's
In the
it going?
Pews.
Thank you.
It's going great. I'm glad to have you. I don't know if you know, but you were on like my wish list of guests for In the Pews.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because we scheduled this a couple times or attempted it a couple times, and then finally we get to make it happen. So I'm excited.
Yeah, the first time you were over at St. Anthony of Padua, and you told me, you said, we'll reschedule it for, maybe a couple of months. Don't worry, I'll come over to you in full share.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, what's up with that? Then like about a week later, I find out Josh Blakesley's coming to St. Faustina. He's going to be our new music director. Now, you've been the new music director for like the past several weeks now, right?
Yeah, so we're like, what are we, 4 or 5 weeks in, something like that? So still getting settled. Yeah.
Now, have you always been a musical person, like growing up ever since you were a kid?
That's a good question. Not exactly. So my first experience with music was in the first grade. I was banging on my desk a lot in school, and I was driving my teacher crazy. I was driving her berserk. So she was. I was all over the place, and she moved me to the front, and I was still like banging, and I just was hearing things in my head. I was hearing rhythms that I had to get out, I guess. And finally, I remember telling her there were so many kids in the class that they actually had like a reading table that she would sit. And I wanted to sit at the reading table. So finally I was like, if I get to go to the reading table, I probably won't play drums on the reading table.
Okay.
And she moved me to the and I still play drums on the reading. So finally she was like, she told my mom, she was like, you got to do something with this kid, to like put him in drum lessons or something. And so I did, she did. And I bought, one Christmas, I woke up and there was a Smurf drum set in the living room.
Smurfs?
Yeah, I was so excited. So it was a Christmas, the year I was in first grade, the Smurfs were on this, drum set. I was so excited to play it. I broke it on the first day.
Wow.
I broke it I just was smashed through, just little paper drum heads, smashed right through them. It was awesome.
So was it a drum set? It was more of a toy drum set
like
than anything else.
Set. Yeah, right. It was the 80s, So that was kind of my first experience with me. And then growing up, I kind of just, I had a tendency toward, drums, percussion. It was a good outlet for me. It was a good, I don't know why I was drawn to it. Nobody in my family played. Mom, Dad, really? Sisters, nobody played. And so it was a little out of the ordinary, I think, for everybody, even my parents' extended family, like nobody played. And so when I got to be in like 7th or 8th grade, they finally broke down and bought the real drum set. It was a different Christmas, but another drum set, and that was when it really kind of this is
a
awesome.
Real thing.
Yeah, I want to do this all the time, and I started to get musical friends, and they came to the house, and it was good that I had the drum set because everybody came to me, so I didn't have to lug the drum set anywhere. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, because it's easier to move guitars, but the drum set,
that's right.
Nowadays, people just usually bring a cajon or something.
Yeah,
like that,
right. Just show up with percussion. Yeah,
but back then it was like a whole thing.
Yeah, it was a whole thing to move everything, and I remember some of the first gigs that we had. They were places I wasn't supposed to be in. I was too young to be playing in some of these places. But my dad would bring, we'd take the whole minivan and just load all of the equipment, the amps, the drums, the whole deal in the minivan, and we'd go, to these.
How old were you at that point when you first started getting?
I was probably 14. Yeah, 14, 15, something like that.
And you had like a whole preteen band.
We had a whole preteen band. We had one guy that was 18, and the rest of us were like 15, 16. Yeah.
What kind of music did you guys play?
Just rock, just the jukebox that everybody,
pop rock.
Yeah, I got to the point where if I played "Don't Stop Believing" one more time, it was it. I was like, I'm leaving. I'm never doing this again.
Were you the vocalist as well?
I did some singing, but I was behind the drums. So, which was kind of cool because some of my main influences were drummer singers because I did love to sing. I just didn't, I didn't have the gear to. We didn't have the Britney Spears mics back then. There was nothing. So I remember seeing a video of Don Henley playing drums with the Eagles. And there was a big mic stand that came up behind him and over his head. And then the mic has on a gooseneck and came down right in front of him. And
Okay.
I remember thinking, that's amazing. I've never thought of that. And so I found a gooseneck and I found a boom mic stand and the whole deal. And then it was on. From then on, I was like, okay, I can sing from back here now, unimpeded with drumsticks. It was great.
That's awesome.
It was great. So Phil Collins, Don Henley.
Phil Collins, I was about to say. Yeah, Phil Collins for sure.
Yeah, I was constantly emulating and trying to find their music. And you know what I think about a lot of times, Rudy, is that if like my kids now, and all the kids now have YouTube. So if you want to learn music, you can just get on YouTube and like go for it.
Yes.
You know? But back then,
right?
There was not, and it caused me to work harder. It caused me to like, okay, I'm diving in. I'm getting back. I want to know how they do this. You know? And so you have to really study it, you know? So anyway, I enjoyed it.
Now you play, I've seen you play the piano and the guitar as well. When did you pick those up?
Yeah. Well,
was it later on?
Yeah. So I think that's one of the beautiful things about having the drum kit at my house was that they were bringing guitars over, they were bringing keyboards over, so there was always stuff left at my house. So the guitar player would occasionally talk to he'd stay after and we'd talk and just start lounging around the house, and there was always an acoustic guitar somewhere, and so I started learning guitar chords from him. And then he started teaching. I started teaching him, some drums. So we kind of swapped a little bit, and then I just, as stuff was left at my house, I started playing on it and working out different things. So probably by the time I was 16 or 17, I could at least get by on guitar, drums, and piano.
Do you play the bass as well?
I do, yeah. I like playing bass. I'm not a bassist, but I do love playing it. It's fun. I just like I like that you can change the dynamic completely with a bass guitar. That it can be one thing, and then the bass enters, and it's a different thing completely.
And there's nothing cooler than going
right. Yeah, right.
The thing, right? That's probably the best thing about being.
That's the best part of it. Yeah, right. I remember the first thing I learned speaking of 80s, the first thing I learned on bass guitar was the Night Court theme song. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was awesome. That was great.
They revived that show now.
I know. That's what reminded me. Yeah.
My wife and I watched that. I'm like, that's the thing in the background from the other episode. Such a Night Court geek.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you learned all these instruments. Did you play in church as well?
So I was playing, I didn't until I was probably later in high school. It was kind of an interesting turn of events that happened in my life leading to that. We were doing just about every week or every other week in a bar or a nightclub or some kind of, music venue or something, and I was playing a lot, and I remember starting to get really underwhelmed with all of it, and just thinking, man, is this it? Is this all it is? Like staying out till 2:00 in the morning and people falling on themselves, and just like it's just, I don't know. I just started to lose kind of the excitement for it,
Yeah.
And around the same time, I was seeing a girl. It always comes down to a girl, right? I was seeing a girl, and I had met her in Spanish class, and I tried to impress her with my mad Spanish skills.
And it
was they weren't good. They're still not good. And so, but she introduced me to church, basically. She introduced me through youth group and through a youth ministry team. She introduced me, her name's Jenny, she introduced me to basically to a relationship with God. So I had been to church, that was kind of a requirement in our house. Mom was like, we're going to church.
So your family
Sunday.
is Catholic?
Catholic, grew up Catholic, yeah.
Both sides, historically Catholic.
That's right. Everybody was Catholic. And but beyond going to church on Sunday, there wasn't much faith. There wasn't much religion in the house. It wasn't much talked about, in that vein. So
pretty much Sunday Catholic.
That's right. That's right. And so when this new sense of this ownership of faith came along, I was like, this is different. It was almost weird to me,
Yeah.
And she kept asking me to return to this prayer meeting, to this youth group, to this, and and she was pretty, so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll keep going. But in the end, I was drawn by, well, it's the Holy Spirit now, but looking back on that, I can see that now. But back then, I didn't really understand what was going. But the whole the community of it, the people of God, like welcoming me into this community, all of that. Sadly, a few, probably, I guess maybe a year into that relationship, maybe a little less. She and I went on to be really good friends, and then at some point she was actually coming back from a retreat that she was working, and a drunk driver hit the car that she was in, and so she was killed. And
oh wow,
it was a devastating thing. It was very traumatic for our entire community. It was just small town Louisiana, Alexandria, Louisiana, and so the whole community was just kind of blown away, traumatized by that event. And so for me, that was there was a light bulb moment for me. I can remember specifically at the wake, walking into the room, and that was the moment for me. It was like, okay, the Lord is asking me to make a decision here, to make a choice. And the realization that she lived her life in such a way that brought others, me being one of those people, brought others to Jesus. Through relationship, through hospitality, through loving, the people around her. I was moved by that. I was moved into a relationship with Jesus myself. I had to investigate. I had to find out more. And to this day, it's the thing that draws me into relationship with Jesus, to just know more about him and to investigate who is God, who am I to God, and really that's prayer for me through music. Anyway, all of that turned to the music that I was playing. All of that turned into a relationship with God. It turned into what I'm doing now has to be about the Lord. Everything.
What parish was this in Louisiana?
Well, now, are you talking about the civil parish, or are you talking about the church parish? Because we have it's Rapides Parish, but it's also it was actually St. Joseph's in Marksville, Louisiana, in Avoyelles Parish. So not southern Louisiana, but south of Alexandria. So Alexandria's kind of central, and then in Marksville. There was a youth group that was happening there, and this just kind of some amazing things that were happening in that little small town. And then after Jenny's death, I mean, you can imagine people were just affected so greatly by this whole thing that the Holy Spirit was able to move by people's openness and people like wanting to receive what he was doing. And man, it really is. It's a beautiful story, because even now, the Steubenville South Conference is held in Alexandria, Louisiana, and in a way that stems from all of that happening years and years ago. Just because Bishop Sam Jacobs was there, he was kind of instrumental in all of just pastoring his people during that time. It was difficult, and he just loved all of us and loved that family. And so even still, there's just something about that place where the Holy Spirit just moves. And
you were in high school at that time, right?
I was in high school. I was about 15 at the time, maybe 16, something like that. And
at that point, were you looking at a career in music? Did you make that connection yet with music and your faith?
I did. I really did want to do something in music. Like I wanted to either move to LA or New York and do something in music. But because we were playing every weekend and I was just finding this dissatisfaction with it, I was questioning all of it. And so when Jenny died, it really caused some pretty important life questions for me, I think, at an early age, 15, 16 years old. And I'm going, what am I supposed to do with this? What does it all mean? Life is obviously so precious and it can be taken away that quickly. So it really called to mind some of the important questions, I think, that we ask ourselves in life. So that was 15, 16 years old, and I was like, man, I'm pretty sure that I want to do this. I don't know what career, but I know I want to follow God for the rest of my life.
So what was your next step after that?
Musically, or spiritually?
Both.
Yes. Well, so I got involved with that youth group. I got involved pretty intensely with that youth group, and I wanted to explore more what God was calling me to. Some of these life questions. So what is it that God is asking of me as a human being? And as I got more involved with this youth group, I learned that they actually went out and did retreats, parish ministry, and conferences, and youth to youth ministry. And it just so happened that they were hoping for somebody that could play music, and so I said, well, I'll play drums, and so they threw me behind a drum set and off we went to play for different confirmation retreats. It was pretty grueling. Some of the, it's not always, not every confirmation student wants to be a confirmation student, and so,
Yes.
so I learned pretty early that it's sometimes difficult to impress the faith on other people who, if they're not ready to hear it,
Yeah. You walk into a hostile crowd sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Confirmation retreat is kind of it can be a hostile crowd. But we did a lot of that as teenagers, 16, 17, growing up, through the years doing that. And I got really close with some of those people are still dear friends to me. I've got a text group right now. I can think of 3 guys that I grew up doing that ministry with that we talk daily. And,
Nice.
And it's just been a beautiful accountability to the faith. It's been a beautiful accountability to prayer and to just being a man of God, and holding true to what we say and what we do.
Now, musically, did you ever take formal lessons?
Formally, in terms of lessons, I did. I took drum lessons for a long time, and then later I took piano lessons for a little while. But I never did any formal training in college or.
So you didn't go to a music school or anything?
I didn't.
Like that?
I went to LSU, and they kind of discouraged me from the music thing, and a lot of friends did too. They
Really?
said, "Hey, you can do music. Why don't you do something? Why don't you major in something that you can fall back on?" And it was probably wise counsel at the time, but now looking back, I wish that I had just followed the path that I felt drawn toward. But yeah, at LSU, it's more of I would say a formal music. There are schools in Louisiana that are a little more toward the media and toward the style of music that I was playing. But
What did you take up
not
in
one of those.
LSU?
So I'm a social scientist. I'm
Oh.
sociology, and so it kind of a totally different direction. But I'm grateful because I think it's helped me to understand people a little bit better and to dive into the sociology and the psychology of people and who I'm around and who I'm with and appreciate and be grateful for the people that I'm around. But right now I'm working on a master's. I'm almost finished with a master's in music production. So I'm excited.
Oh,
so
nice.
I finally went back and I was like, okay, I'm following this. I want to do this.
Where are you studying that?
Berkeley in Boston. So it's an online course. It's awesome. It's been awesome. It's so, if all of school was this way, oh man, different ballgame. Yeah.
So when did you start
fun.
writing music? Did you always write music when you were, since you were young, or?
I started writing music when I was, I think the first song I was 14, I think. 13? 13. I was 13 years old. First song, Someone Like You. Love song.
Oh, it was a love song.
Guitar, 2 chords.
Really?
Yeah, 2 chords, the whole thing. 2 chords.
Do you still remember it?
I do. Yeah, I still remember it. I think I could still get through it. It's been a while, but yeah. Yeah.
14, and then you just kept writing music, or did it?
Yeah, I mean, over time, I mean, I wasn't explicitly writing music and, like really scheduled on, and like once a month I've got to turn out 3 songs or whatever. It wasn't. But when I was inspired, when something, and I spent a lot of time in my room working on music. I just loved it. And I was, it was just something that I could hyper focus on. And so once in a while I would do that, and I wasn't satisfied until the song was finished. So it wasn't something I could walk away from and just go, okay, well, one day I'll finish that. It was like, if I walked away from it, I was going to do whatever and then coming right back to it so I could finish it. So all through high school, I would say, and then college, I really got kind of dived more into songwriting. And and then as I got married and started looking more seriously at what is it that you have to do to be a husband and a wife and a provider, not a husband and wife, a husband and dad and provider, then I really dove more into, okay, so what is publishing all about? What is songwriting really all about? And trying to study those things and learn those things, and writing with other good writers. And the more I talked to other good writers and the more I wrote with other good writers, the more I learned that the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I guess that's true with anything, but particularly with songwriting, because man, you just have to put the time in,
How did you meet these writers?
So early on, the first album that I did, I wrote all of the songs myself. I put a couple of covers on that record as well.
Were you still in college, or you had already graduated?
I graduated. So, it's funny. I was at LSU. My wife and I, actually, we went to high school together, but we didn't date until we got to LSU. And then all of a sudden we decided we were interested in each other. So, we spent a lot of time together, in college. And then, after we got married, I was like, okay, I got to buckle down. And I went into real estate. And I was like, I'm going to be a real estate guru, I'm going to do this. I'm going to know everything there is to know about real estate. And then I realized that commercial or residential real estate was not all it was cracked up to be, at least not for me. I just could not escape music. I could not. So I was going to work and I was trying to sell houses and talk about contracts and square footage and all of these things. But in the back of my mind, I was like, man, when's my next event? When's the next event that I'm doing? When's the next weekend away or the, where I'm going to,
Were you still playing at church at that time?
I was doing, I had, so I started at Our Lady of Prompt Succor is what everybody should say. What we say in Alexandria, because we're hillbillies, is Prompt Succor, Louisiana, Prompt Succor Church. So at Prompt Succor, I was there for several years, 18 total. But early on, just doing part-time work there. So just in the evenings, playing for mass and helping them out, and then trying to work during the week as a real estate agent. And then finally one day, Heather and I sat down, my wife Heather and I sat down and just went, hey, we got to really think about this calling. This is something that it just feels like God keeps pulling us toward. And I've got these songs and, I want to do something with them. And we both felt like through prayer that God was calling us to do more, to dive into that, and that He would use it for something, So as we ventured into that, we took kind of a big risk, and I knew some friends of mine that had moved out to Arizona and got involved with the Life Team movement out there at St. Tim's, and so I knew that there was people out there that were really good in Catholic music, and so as we kind of just put those relationships together, I was able to get some help, kind of, some guidance on what to do,
Just a little networking here.
That's
and there,
right.
and,
That's right. How to professionally, get music recorded and make it sound great, like in the CCM world. And I had emulated, man, I just loved, once I made that switch from playing in bars to playing in churches and trying to write Christian music and trying to play Christian music and listening to Christian music. And it was such a fruitful time. The 90s were, oh my gosh, Christian music in the 90s. I still love it. So many people are going to watch this and go, you are the cheesiest person. And I don't care, because Stephen Curtis Chapman, I still think when I listen to his music, I still feel like he is the guy that is sitting next to me having a conversation with me through the music that he's playing. That's what happens when he writes and plays. DC Talk, Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant, Michael English. Some of these people were just cranking out amazing, not just amazing songs, but they were performing them amazingly, that just as well as anybody in secular music. And I just thought, man. So that was just such an inspiration, and I just was like, okay, so I want to present the music that I do. I want to present it that well for God, like what we do for the Lord shouldn't be less because there's some, accommodation made, but rather it should be great because it's for the greatest being in the universe.
Yes.
So how do we make it awesome? And that was, for me, that was the thing. It was like, I got to, so I reached out to friends, through Life Teen, and, a guy named Jeff Thomas who, still lives in Nashville. He's actually a music director at a parish there now in Brentwood, and still a good friend. We talked this week, as a matter of fact. He's mixing some songs for me, and he produced my first record. And man, just so much fun when I think about the memories that some of the players that played on that, and the process of all that.
When you made that first record, how did you market it? Did you try to find a label or something, or you released it independently?
Yeah, we took out a second mortgage on our house.
Really?
It was a huge leap of faith.
Wow.
I do not recommend doing that. But it was something that we felt like the Lord was really calling us toward, and man, it took a big leap of faith for us, but we felt confident that we knew enough people and that we had enough events, planned throughout the year to pay for the record if it couldn't pay for itself. And the plan was, let's just order, a couple thousand copies of it and see if we can sell it when I would go and play in places. And
what was the name of that album?
Immersed. Yeah. And Immersed was, it's one of my favorite albums because I think it's so innocent in a lot of ways, and the songwriting was early, and it was my first venture into the professional music world, and really trying to answer the call to be great at music, So anyway, yes, it wasn't long after I finished that album. I still remember Heather and I were sitting in an Olive Garden in Baton Rouge, and my friend Paul George called, and Paul was from Alexandria. He grew up doing ministry with him. Still, he's one of the guys who just grew up and still talk to him all the time. He had moved out to Arizona. He was out there with Tom Booth and Matt Maher, and they were working at St. Tim's and just doing God's work, just in the trenches and doing great music ministry, great ministry with Life Teen, and so Paul called, and I said, it's date night. I'm out here at Olive Garden with my wife. We're putting that down, so we put the phone down, and we just went back to talking, and he must have called 4 more times. And Heather was like, just get it. I was like, okay, there's the answer. And Paul is sitting, he's out to dinner with Tom Booth, with Matt, and with John Lim, who was the president or publisher for OCP at the time, for Oregon Catholic Press. And he was like, hey, Josh, I'm sitting here with some guys, and we've just been listening to your record, and everybody really likes it. And I was like, oh, well, that's awesome. He's like, yeah, you're on speakerphone. I was like, oh, okay, I'm in Olive Garden. And so anyway, it turns out they liked the project and offered to buy the project, the masters from me, which was amazing because we didn't know what we were going to do. I mean, honestly, like besides just trying to sell it out of our trunk for the next 2 years, we didn't know how we were going to pay for it. And
what year was this?
Ooh, testing the memory. 2001-ish.
So your masters, were they digital or did you?
I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah, no, it was Pro Tools. Yeah, so they were digital. Yeah, they were digital at the time. Yeah, early on when I was in high school, we did some recording, which, man, I hope nobody ever hears some of that early stuff. But that was like on ADAT. That was like on the old school digital tape. So
it wasn't the big reel-to-reel ones.
No, yeah, I didn't work on any of the reel-to-reel stuff. But I would love to do that actually, though. One day I need to do that.
Get that old school sound.
Yeah, right.
Now let's rewind a little bit. When your friend had died and you were going through that whole, you were reflecting on everything, did you ever think of priesthood or entering seminary?
I did. So that's a great question, Rudy, because in all of that time, in that life questioning, like what is God calling me to do? I really dove in spiritually to what God wanted for me, for a career, for what God wanted, for me, for a vocation. And so I started meeting Bishop Sam Jacobs, who I talked about earlier. He's just one of my favorite people on the planet. In terms of pastoring a people, I mean, there's very few people on the planet, very few bishops on the planet who will get that down grassroots in the weeds with the people. And he was a spiritual director for me for years. I went and met with him once a month, and we sat down, and I went to confession, and we talked about, how is your prayer life? How are you? And he would hold me accountable to things, and it was such a beautiful time. And I approached that question with him like. He wouldn't have let me escape without approaching that question. It's like, have you thought about the priesthood? No, Bishop, I'm not thinking about the priesthood. You need to think about it. So I did. So I spent a long time really diving into that question and praying on if this was something that was that the Lord was calling me toward. But ultimately, yeah, I felt called toward marriage, and as a vocation, I wanted to be husband, and I wanted to be dad. Yeah.
Were you seeing your now wife at that time?
Not yet. No. Yeah.
Still just
this
friends.
was before then. Yeah. We were just friends. We knew each other, but yeah, at that time, yeah, no, we weren't involved.
Did your wife know that that girl, the one who had died?
She did. As a matter of fact, Heather was in the car. She was in the car that same night. They were both in the back seat. Heather survived the accident.
Oh wow!
She was in the hospital for weeks and weeks afterwards, a broken femur and some other things. But yeah, it was pretty devastating for her, for her family, for just the whole community. I mean, it was insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
So fast forward, your first album, you give them the masters, and then they release it, to a wider audience.
Yeah, so they take the masters, and I'm learning as I go here. I've got no music degree, I've got no music business degree, I've got no idea, any of this, and I'm calling. Luckily, Heather, my wife's got some attorneys in her family, so I'm like calling them, going, "Is this a contract? What's a contract?" And just trying to figure out what next steps are and all of that. And OCP is such a great company. They always have been such a good company, really based on Catholicism for 100 years now. They've been doing this, and which is amazing that the Catholic company has been it's been around that long, and they're still plugging away, and obviously very on the up and up, and honest, and willing to make anything happened that we needed to make happen. And so it was a great experience. The whole thing was a great experience. Still is. I still have a great relationship with them, and they publish the music that I'm writing still. And just 20 years of amazing musical relationship with them. But I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know how it should all begin. So as I gave it to them, I kind of entrusted it to them. There was also a lot of discussion at that time. I'm trying to remember all the people at the table. Matt Marr, Curtis Stephen, Steve Angersano, Sarah Hart, I think, Tom Booth. There were a few. We were all drawn together for the idea of Spirit and Song, for this label version of OCP, or this contemporary version of Oregon Catholic Press. And so it was this big meeting in Portland, and we took a weekend and prayed and talked, and it really was an amazing weekend where so much was born and still exists today, and it has changed forms a little bit and has turned and weaved, but it really was an introduction of, I think, contemporary music for the church. And yeah, I love it. That's a whole conversation there. But I love what they started back then and what we're still doing today. I just think it has so much beauty and merit and has brought so many people into the church. So yeah.
At what point did you say, "Hey, I can make a career out of this"?
I think that was probably it.
When they bought that first album.
Yeah, when that happened, it felt like such an affirmation from the Lord. Like we placed our trust in Him. Jesus, I trust in you. And we said that as a couple, and in terms of like two people searching for what are we going to do with the rest of our life, and He was faithful. He answered that prayer in the way that we were asking it to be answered, which, that doesn't always happen. A lot of times we ask for our wants or our needs, and God goes, okay, in my time, but the answer isn't always yes. Sometimes we have to be willing to hear no from the Lord.
Did anyone tell you, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't put a second mortgage on your house? This is not exactly the smartest move.
Yeah, I think my mom said that. I think my mom said that a couple of times. She was like, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't. But we felt good though. Honestly, it wasn't a crazy decision. It wasn't like an irresponsible decision.
Did you have kids?
We knew that we had family. We didn't have kids yet.
Okay.
And we knew that we had family who loved us and supported us and were behind us and wanted it to happen. And so as we took the step, we felt like the Lord coming back and going, all right, here is your out, and here's the way that I'm going to provide for you. We felt like that was such an affirmation that was kind of the beginning for me. It was like, okay, this is it. And I took that CD and I sent, because they bought the master, but I still had, my father-in-law, we were just going to buy 2,000 copies and try to sell them throughout the summer events we did. And my father-in-law was like, "Nah, we're going to buy 4,000." He was like, "I'm getting behind you," and it was awesome. So I still had. They bought the masters, and I still had 4,000 copies I had to get rid of. So
wow,
I was like, now what do I do with all these CDs in my attic?
Yeah, it's a different mix, right? Yeah.
So then
those collector's items,
right. I don't know where they are now. We sold them. I mean, I worked hard over the next couple of years to tour and get that project out there and let folks know what we're doing. In fact, I took that CD and mailed it to every single diocese in all 200 and something dioceses in the country. And,
really?
And just to youth directors and directors of youth ministry, and just going, hey, this is what I do. If you need help, with music for your event, this is what I do. And it was well received, and the phone started ringing. Thank God, the phone started ringing.
At that point, is that when you stopped the real estate?
I did it for a little bit longer, but not much longer. Yeah, after that,
it's kind of half in and out.
That's right. I turned and we had a couple of other things. We moved back to Baton Rouge for a time and lived there, and I worked for what was called the Governor's Program on Abstinence, which was awesome. It was the state of Louisiana kind of working toward abstinence in schools, in public schools.
Okay.
So it was an awesome time to kind of, so I was kind of working on that part-time and traveling at the same time. So it was awesome that the Lord was just providing ways for us to make it happen and do what we felt like we were called to do. So
when did the kids come?
Well,
was it so much later?
2005. 2005, we had Sophie, and
still in Louisiana.
Still in Louisiana, yeah. She had, and man, that changed the whole world. We had a dog, and that was it. And then we had Sophie, and you're just like, oh, a baby. Now what?
This is a human with a soul.
That's right. What do we do? And it was, she was a good baby. She was not a good baby. She cried so much. She was awesome
colicky.
Child.
Was she colicky?
I don't know if she was colicky or if we just spoiled her is probably what happened, because everybody, it was our first, and everybody wanted to hold her, and so yeah, we tried everything. We stood on our heads to get that baby to go to sleep. But so, and then Sutton was born in 2007, 2 years later. So they are 18 and 16 now. It's a different ball game from diapers. Yeah.
Now, when you start making music and it's starting to click and everything like that, did anyone ever tell you, hey, maybe you can try something a little more secular? Did anybody try to sway you that way? Something a little more quote unquote marketable?
Not really. I mean, I was pretty set on, playing in churches and making Christian music, particularly Catholic Christian music, and moving contemporary Christian music into the liturgy, and what does that look like, and what does it sound like, and how do we do that appropriately? I think that's the big thing. After Vatican II, I think there was a lot of craziness and a lot of things happened in liturgy that was like, that's questionable. But even still, I think it takes a particular touch to bring contemporary music into the liturgy. And so I really started asking the question, how do we do that well? And what does that sound like? And should all of this music is all of this music for liturgy? Maybe some of it's not. Maybe some of it's appropriate for liturgy, some of it's not. And so, and I think that was that was true even with Immersed, even with the first album. That was true, because there are some of the songs on that project that even today I would play in Mass, but there are some that I wouldn't. I just don't think they're appropriate for liturgy. So, I think it's an important delineation, that I wanted to make even early on as we started this.
So when you're making when you're writing the songs and you're making the music, and do you think, oh, this is definitely for church and this one's not? Do you already think about that, or do you just wait till the final product comes out?
Yeah, I do. I think with a lot of the songs I write now, I'm writing more specifically toward liturgy. And back then I was writing more toward radio. I was even experimenting a little bit with, is there a place where these two things meet? Is there a place where a song can be on the radio and it can also be appropriate for liturgy? And I think the answer to that question is yes, it can be, but not every song appropriate for liturgy is appropriate for radio, and vice versa. Not every song that's on the radio should be in Mass, but I think there are some that can cross those bounds. But now well, I don't know. I still do that a little bit, because I just think sometimes, in order to write a song that is that's peppy and has, it's up tempo and it has emotion and feeling behind it, and it's joyful, I think that has that's generally what radio is looking for, and I think there's a place for that, in liturgy, if it's got the right feel to it. So.
Now, did anyone ever tell you, like a manager or something like that, or anyone try to give you advice, hey, maybe try not to write things that are so Catholic, something that's a little more broad to other denominations? Has anyone ever said anything like that to you?
Yeah, because it's funny, Nashville's not, most of the CCM world, the contemporary Christian music world, is not Catholic. And there's been a whole network made of radio stations and promoters and concert venues and churches who consider themselves concert venues, and all of this whole beautiful network of things that's kind of been set up, but it's not. Most of those places aren't Catholic, and so it's just a little different. And so as I have met in the past and still continue to meet with some of those organizations, labels, companies, publishers, right? I'm still in that world, and once in a while my manager will go, okay, you gotta back off on the Catholics per minute, man. You're like really dropping the because I do talk. My language is just it's Catholic. I just I use words like liturgy and sacrament and sacredness and holiness and things that it's a different. Sometimes it's a different language. There's just a different vocabulary sometimes, and. So sometimes she's like, you got to slow down on the Catholics per minute. You're like, really? So,
have you ever come to a point where somebody said, okay, well, we'll give you this gig, but you gotta back off on, the Catholic lyrics or the Catholic songs, or don't sing this song that's, obviously Catholic.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I have not really gotten that. In most I mean, we're church, right? I mean, we're mostly, for the most part, pretty forgiving. I have found. It's been my experience. I remember one time I was playing at a Baptist church, and I started talking about one of the songs that I wrote, which is common. Before I sing it, sometimes I'll launch into a little story about how I wrote it or whatever. And so this particular song is "Our God Is Good." It's on Immersed. It was on the first project, and we still do it live. It's just kind of one of those songs that crowds immediately kind of respond to. So we've always done it, and I'm launching into this talk about, I was writing this song with my friend Cooper Ray, and it's from the book of Tobit. Well, so I went through this whole thing about the book of Tobit and scripture, and Tobit is not one of the books that's in the Catholic Bible.
Yes.
Not so much in other. So anyway, I never thought anything about it, but then afterwards, the pastor was like, Tobit, huh?
He pulled you aside.
But it was all in good fun. Like he was laughing so hard about it, and thought, and I thought it was hilarious because of all the books for me to talk about in the Bible. I went to Tobit, which is really strange, and I rarely do that. I rarely even say Tobit anywhere. But it was just a funny moment but he was really good about it. And he was like, he's got a PhD in scripture or whatever, and from his seminary, so he knows what I was talking about. But most of his assembly did not. So he wasn't bothered at all. But it was funny.
Did you ever feel the urge to make music that wasn't, praise type music or contemporary Christian music, just pop music in general, or love songs like your first song that you wrote when you were a kid?
Yeah, once in a while, I will do that. I do turn my attention. I think any good writer, if he or she is really writing and spending time writing, and even in my journaling, like when I pray, I pray towards journaling. It's kind of just that Ignatian spirituality, and because I like to write, I write out my thoughts. They're more clear to me when I write them down, and so in that writing and in the prayer and in the writing of songs, I think it's good to get that out. And in any good writer, I think, should just write their heart, and not be stuck into a corner of one thing or another, So I like country. I like to write toward country. I think there's just still, that's the form of music that's still using guitars and bass and drums. I love to listen to pop music, but I don't write a whole lot of pop music. So,
so we're not going to hear any rap music from you.
Probably not, but maybe there's actually some good Catholic rappers out there right now that are doing really good stuff. I think it'd be fun to collaborate. I do.
Have you ever had any of those types of ideas that you just can't get it off the ground, but it would be interesting? Anybody approach you?
Like for songs?
Yeah. Of different genres as well?
Yeah, man, I've got a really good country song idea that I have never, but I want to say it out loud because somebody's going to take it and run with it. And it's because it's such a good idea, but I have not been able to form it into what I feel like it needs to be as a song. And usually my process, and unless I'm like really sitting down on a deadline, or like sometimes I'll make a trip to Nashville to sit down and write, or I'll schedule a session on Zoom or something to sit down and write, and we'll just for 2 hours crank something out, but a lot of times when I'm writing by myself, my process is like waiting on the melody to come, waiting, and then when something hits me, I get my phone out, a voice memo, or I get a piece of paper or something and start writing the idea so I don't lose it. But with this particular song, I don't know why, it has never hit me. It's just never come. And I did, one time I sat down, I was in Nashville with a guy who's a country music writer, and we sat down together, and we got verse and chorus, but even, when I go back to it, it's just not right to me. So
do the lyrics come to you first, or the music whenever you write?
It just depends. Sometimes I'll get an idea. It's usually usually a lyric idea comes to me first, like some sort of theme. I've been trying to write something for Holy Thursday for probably a year and a half now, but I can't come up with anything that sounds good to wash my feet. It's just, that's a weird
something. Yeah,
it's a weird phrase
during the foot washing during mass.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, eventually I'll sit down and something will, but those are the kind of phrase. There's a phrase that will pop into my head, and then I try to set that phrase to music. So I usually try to start with a hook or a chorus of some sort. Yeah.
Now, I've asked you this after one of our choir practices here at St. Faustina. What does it feel like when you hear somebody like a church choir just not do your song that well? Because we've butchered your songs in front of you. Yes, we have.
No, I think, I've had this discussion with a couple different people actually, and I think Monica said this. She's like music is such an art. I think she approaches it that way, and I love that. I love the idea that music is an art form. And a lot of times when I'm writing a song, it's like a clay pot that's just spinning, and clay is flying everywhere, and you're trying to shape it into what it's supposed to be, and it's a messy process as you do that. And I think once you finish it and you get what you think is this beautiful finished piece, you record it that way, and this is the way that you want it to be remembered, and you want other people to do it that way as well. And that's the whole point of especially in Catholic music. Like here's the resource, here's the recording, and here's the sheet music. These are kind of the ways that you should do it. But it's still an art form. So it's like when people get it and they hear it differently than the way that you heard it or you recorded it, I think it has to be okay. It just has to be okay that it's presented a little bit differently.
Have you heard any like very interesting renditions of your songs? Anything comes to mind? I think it does, based off the look on your face.
Okay, well, there's this one time that we were in. I think we were in Texas. We were somewhere in Texas. This was years ago. I was still living in Louisiana, and we were doing a tour somewhere, or I was a one-off. I don't remember. And we were at church, and there was a player, as a harmonica player, and he asked if he could play with us on our last song. And I thought, well, I don't know. It's scary because I don't know if he play. And a harmonica.
And how good is he?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how he. So I went with it. I was like, okay, he seemed like a nice guy, and so he shows up with his harmonica, and he's got a whole box of them. So he looks like as pro harmonica players go, he looks pretty serious, and he's got his whole box out here, and he brings it out, and so I tell him we're in the key of G. I yell, we're in the key of G, and so we start the song, and we're playing, and we're getting into the intro pretty good, and then he comes in just wailing on his harmonica, and it's terrible, it's awful, it's so bad, and I'm like, what is happening right now? What is he doing? And I'm looking at the other players. We're like, how do we get out? Where is the exit? Abort. We're like trying to get out of the situation, and I realized that we had tuned a half step down for the whole event. We tuned a half step because it was an acoustic event, so it made the acoustics it makes it sound thicker and fuller if you tune a half step down.
He didn't do anything wrong.
So he didn't do anything wrong. He was actually probably killing it but in the wrong key. So we played the whole song, and I don't know. To his credit, he made it look great. He was dancing around and having a blast. But we played that a whole.
When did you realize that you were
off through the whole thing?
When did you realize? Was it halfway through the song or after the song was over that you realized?
No, it was about. He was about 5-6 bars into the intro, playing, and it was sounding terrible. That I was.
But that you realized that the half step. When did you realize?
Well, I knew that we were tuned down a half step. We were playing it in G. I just didn't tell him that we were actually in F sharp because we were G flat. So anyway,
when did that connection happen? That you realized?
About 4 or 5 bars in, I was like, I just realized we are not playing that in the key that you're playing it in. But it was too late. We were already in. I was singing, and he was.
Oh, you couldn't yell over to him. We're in the wrong key. Sorry.
Right. Yeah,
our fault.
It was game over. It was game over. So.
Any other renditions of your songs that, like, you walk into a church or something and you hear one of your songs, or
No, I mean, once in a while that'll happen. Once I was we went to Mass. We were on a vacation, beach vacation, down at Gulf Shores somewhere, or Orange Beach, somewhere down there, and went to Mass on Sunday, and they were playing one of my songs, and it was, I mean, it's not the way that I would have done it, but again, it's an art, it's different, and I always I make it a point, even if it's just a cantor and an organist, I try to, when I'm visiting other churches, just go and say, hey, be affirmed. Thanks for doing music in a Catholic church, and for singing, for giving your gift, and just for serving the church in this way, So, and I did that day as well, just to...
Did you ever?
My kids hate that, by the way.
When your song?
No, just that I have to stay after Mass and go tell, because it's just in me. It's like the music director, the music minister in me would want to hear that from a visitor, And so,
yes,
I just it's just important to me. And my kids are like, "Oh God, just get in the car, Dad."
It's like he always has to talk to the people.
Yeah, right.
But did you ever hear a rendition of one of your songs and say, "Wow"? Oh, I never would have thought to do it that way, or that's a great, rendition or a great take it.
Not that I can think of. Yeah, but once in a while I'll hear a new version of somebody else's song, and I love this. That once in a while I'll hear. A lot of times, Spirit and Song will do this actually, or Choose Christ. Now, we'll take a song that I've heard 1,000 times one way. And then they'll re-record that and present it in a different way. And I go, and then all of a sudden I hear why people love the song so much, and I'm like, oh, and it's great. So there's a couple
new
of
again.
Yeah, right. They actually had me re-record City of God recently, and so I reproduced that song and released it. And as I was diving into the weeds of that song, I was just like, okay, now I kind of get why everybody celebrates this song so much. So yeah, sometimes it's just a representation, and it's like, man, okay, yeah.
I know you've been asked this a million times, but what song is extra special to you? One of your favorite ones?
That's a tough one, because they're all kind of like your babies. You write them and you spend so much time with them, and you work so hard on the craft of it, and then crafting the song, and then recording the song, and getting the right players, or getting the right sounds for it, so it's tough. But I think right now I'm really focused on Beautiful Is Your Love, just because, I mean, we've recorded it twice, which is unusual. It's on Even in This, which was a project that I did with the band that we self-produced, and that we we didn't self-produce it. We self-released independently, and we raised all the money for it through Kickstarter several years ago, and had Michael Farron, who wrote several of the songs with us on it, produce it as well. And so we released the song Beautiful Is Your Love on that project, and we've had so many good experiences with it, and so many successful times where we're talking, or when we're playing music at an event, and we start that song and people just jump in with us. I mean, it's like they've heard it before. And it's a strange experience. It's brought me to tears more than once. And I just start, and I'm like, I'm still surprised. Like, I just go, how do you know this song? Where did you hear this?
It is, because when I heard it, I thought, it's like, I've heard this song before.
Yeah.
It's very familiar, but
something
it was
about
new
it.
to me.
It's strange. So we re-recorded that on the latest project, Outpoured, which just came out, and Beautiful Is Your Love is kind of the focus track right now for that. So we've been promoting it, but and I'm not saying this just because we're promoting that song or that. I'm saying this because it's the only song that I can ever remember it being so powerful and have such a long-lasting life to it. That even still, as we play it and sing it, either in Mass or in adoration, that it people just can start singing it with us, and so to us it was worth. When I say us, I'm talking about the band. It was worth re-recording that song and re-releasing it to let a new audience hear it and be a part of whatever it is that's going on with that song. So,
is there any song that you really had to grind out? It took forever to get finally the final version of it?
Yeah, let's see. Well, Beautiful Is Your Love was not that way. It was the opposite of that, actually, because I wrote that with Mark Bird, who you've heard God of Wonders Beyond it. It's Mark Bird's song, and then Sarah Hart, she's a brilliant writer and has written a lot of music. And so that one just kind of, I mean, it just came right out. It was like, oh, okay, we were done in an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it was just an amazing kind of, one of those moments.
Lightning in a bottle, huh?
Yeah, right. But in terms of like some of the more difficult ones, I can't think off the top of my head of anything that's, there's some, I just wrote one called Behold the Lamb. It's not recorded yet. I hadn't even submitted it yet. I'm about to submit it. And it's been a little bit more laborious. I wrote it with a friend, Rich Grillone, who's up in Pennsylvania. He's a music director up there and super talented guy. He notates music so fast. I mean, like he's just super fast and super smart and a great musician, great writer. And we sat down to write, because it's the year of the Eucharist, right? This diocesan year of the Eucharist, and we're moving into pretty soon the parish revival year of the Eucharist, and so many beautiful things happening here over the next couple of years with the Eucharistic revival and focusing on Jesus' real presence in the body and blood of Christ that we receive in the liturgy at Mass. So we wanted to write toward that. And that's a big topic, right? I write about that all the time, but all of a sudden, with the year that we're in and the approaching year of Eucharist and all of that stuff, it became such a more weighty topic, And so as
the importance of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so as we started writing it, that we kind of started feeling the weight of it and just wanted it to be really good. So nothing really felt right, as we were going, no, it's not good. It's not good enough. We need another line, And so it's been, we really, I think we started it a month ago and really just maybe 3 weeks ago, and just kind of yesterday got to the point where we feel like, okay, here's a good demo that really represents, I think, what this song needs to be. So we finished it up. But yeah, that was kind of a labor of love. Yeah, it took us a minute to get there.
Have you ever had like a bout of writer's block where you just couldn't write anything, make any music, or write anything new for an extended period of time?
Thank God, no, I haven't. I've heard about writers, dealing with that, and I haven't really experienced that. I feel like whenever I really sit down and I go, yep, I'm gonna just smash through this, then I can usually do it. And that's really what I've always heard about writer's block, is to just finish the song,
just like power through
it, whatever happens. And it may not be, it's not gonna be a number one hit anywhere. It's okay, just finish the song.
You wrote one of the Mass settings. Could you tell us a little about it?
Yeah. So Mass of Restoration started. I was at Prompt Succor, and my guitarist Gray McCullough was. He and I were associate music directors there at the parish for years and years together. And this was right when the settings had changed. We started writing a new Mass parts, because all of the Mass settings at that point were going to be pretty much extinct, because the text was changing.
Yes.
So we couldn't use them anymore.
Yeah. So right around 2012,
2011, I think.
2011?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So all of that was changing, and we wanted to contribute to the new group of songs that was about to come out. And so Mass of Restoration was born around that time. There was a lot of restoration going on just in our own lives spiritually, and so that's kind of where the name came from. It's also in one of the songs. Restored is the name of one of the songs on a project that we did, one of the albums that we did back then, You Are the Light. So there was a lot. We were doing a tour right behind that, so there was a lot of focus on the idea of restoration and of God just restoring us, reviving us, and so that's why we decided to name it that. But we really wanted to write something that was approachable from all angles, because recognizing that the church has this sometimes it becomes a dichotomy, and I can't stand when this happens, because we're the universal church. We should be about unity, and for some reason we get into this musical divide that it should be one way or another. So we really wanted to approach these mass parts in a way that they could be played, prayed, performed at mass in a way that no matter if you're playing organ, if you're playing guitar, if you're playing piano, or if you just want to chant them, that it could be done that way. And so that was the goal from the beginning. And I think that we accomplished that. And in the process, we decided to record it 3 different times. So we recorded it once with just acoustic guitar. So if you're at a summer camp and all you have is your acoustic, here's how this is the representation of that. This is how you would do it that way. But if you're at mass and you've got your contemporary band and you've got keyboards and electric guitars and drums and bass and all that stuff, and an orchestra, whatever, here's the global use of it, and that's Massive Restoration Live. And then we did another one called Massive Restoration, the Sacred Sessions, and that is with organ and strings and a choir. And so it's just the presentation of that 3 different ways, so that no matter what music your church has, you can use this setting. So that was the idea behind it. Yeah.
So when you walked into the project, you're like, we're going to make a mass setting.
Yeah.
That's what it was. You said, we're going to sit down, we're going to grind this out. How long did it take you to do the entire thing?
It took a few weeks. It took a few weeks to get through the initial, and it changed form several times even after those few weeks. But we got through the original, I didn't want to just do a Gloria and a Holy and an Amen and some memorial acclamations. I wanted to do the whole thing. So with the Kyrie is in there. We have a Lenten Gospel acclamation and the regular one and the Gloria and the Holy. 3 memorial acclamations, Amen, Lamb of God. The whole setting is there.
Yes.
And then in addition to that, in order to make it completely comprehensive, we wanted to write as many gospel acclamations as we could, the verses.
Yes.
So whether it's Lent or Advent or whatever season, if it's A, B, or C in the cycle, whatever, you've got everyone is set to music. So if you're a cantor, you don't have to look around for which setting you have music for.
Yeah.
It's all right here in this setting, and that's something that not a whole lot of mass settings have. And so it was important to me that we make it simple for the cantor, because I know the pain of being the week of, and it's like, oh gosh, what about the gospel acclamation? My bass player, he jokes about this with us all the time, because when we're doing mass, when we're out on, we're doing like a conference or something, and mass is coming up, and it's always the psalm response, right? It's always the psalm response that catches you off guard. We know all the other songs. We've done them a million times.
Yeah.
But the psalm response, it has to be verbatim, and it has to be, And so at the last minute, I'm looking at the USCCB website. I'm going, okay, what are the readings for the day? What's the psalm for today? Oh no, Psalm 400,028. We don't have a setting for it, And so at the last minute, I'm freaking out, and I'm either trying to write something or find a setting, And so my bass player, he finally goes, after like the 4th or 5th time that he's watched me do this, he's like, "Do you not know that the psalm is coming?" I'm like, "Okay, all right, no, yeah, this is a problem. If we're doing this much, this is a problem." So yeah, I've started looking more in advance now for the psalms for the weekends, but yeah, I mean, it's a verbatim situation, so you want to have it all there in front of you.
Here's just a thought. I know this may be a Herculean task, but what do you think about, writing music for all of the Psalms in the Massive Restoration so it'll match?
Yeah, it is a Herculean task. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it might get a little, it's all in E, and we tried to be pretty matchy throughout all the different settings. And but man, how many Psalms are there? 100 yeah, that might get boring there towards the end.
You might get a little crazy, pulling your hair out.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like 123. I can't get it to work.
But I write Psalms all the time. I probably have enough to make a psalter. Honestly, there's so many of them that are just hanging out loosely around my computer hard drive somewhere. Because you just out of need, or you come across a psalm and you're like, okay, well, we've done this one 100 times. Everybody and the assembly is sick of it, so we've got to do something new. So I'll just write something, or if I can't find something. But yeah,
Just give a different spin to it.
Yeah, right.
Musically, that is, of
Right.
course.
Yeah, and there's lots of folks who are kind of doing that now. Francesca Rohr, I think is how you pronounce her last name. She's awesome. She's a YouTuber that has gotten lots of traction just playing her psalms, and she's selling them now, and people are kind of, they're beautiful. She's writing beautiful psalms. So lots of folks are doing that now.
Now, before you were the music director here at St. Faustina, you were at St. Anthony of Padua. Is that the first time you've been music director, or have you been doing it for a while?
Yeah, well, so I was, for 18 years, I was at Prompt Succor, and I was the associate music director there, and really, I was happy doing that because it allowed me to travel as needed. The pastor was very good about just, he would always say, yeah, we're happy to share you with the rest of the world. So whenever you need to go, it's fine. It was good. And not being the director allowed me not just to travel, but to not have to worry when I was out. So there was always somebody there that was going to cover it. So, so it was good. And then, when I was, after 18 years at a parish, I was just like, man, I have got to, I just needed a respite from it, and the from the grind, and I needed a change. And so I took a year, and I just focused on travel and touring and production. I started doing a lot more production for OCP and for some other artists, Sarah Kroger and Out of Darkness and Mary Kate Westridge, and just like cranking out recordings for other artists, and I was really happy doing that and traveling. And I was at I was doing a concert here in Conroe at Sacred Heart, and Father Tom Rafferty was there, and he came up after and he said, well, my music director said she's thinking about maybe moving on, and would you consider? And I was like, nope. Did it? Don't
Really?
wanna. Yeah, no, I'm good. And I was content, but we finally said, Heather and I prayed, and Father Tom was persistent and kind and sweet, and so we and the kids were in a good place too. Sophie was going into her freshman year. Sutton was going into his 7th grade year. So they were going to be kind of switching anyway, switching schools. So
it's a good time to.
It was a good time, yeah. And we kind of felt like the Lord was, was kind of setting us up for opportunity. And so we said, well, okay, let's pray. And we did. We took a lot of time to pray and consider, and finally felt like it was time to make a move. So we did. We jumped ship and moved to. That was about 4 years ago. And I was at St. Anthony of Padua with Father Tom, and it was great. It was great. I was there for about 3.5 years. So,
how did this start?
Yeah.
St. Faustina.
Well, so I'm trying to remember how it all went down. I had come to play here a couple times. I did concerts here a couple times, so I was familiar with the parish and the beauty of all that this parish offers. I think. Just being welcomed and being a part of the hospitality. It brought me back, honestly, to the early times in my Christianity where I was welcomed by a people, where I was welcomed by the people of God, wanting me to be a part of what was going on there. And I think that speaks volumes. The church gives us so much doctrine and so much, we have so much focus on scripture and on documents, and we have so much knowledge of history and tradition and all of those things are beautiful and wonderful to give us, kind of to guard the edges of our faith. But to me, what really welcomes me into the arms of Jesus is the people of God. And I try to be that for others. I want to always be welcoming to others. And so it just really spoke to me here. And so I'm trying to remember if Brian Lennox reached out first, or if we were doing music for the Archdiocesan Youth Conference
Okay.
here, and And I remember my truck battery died.
Really?
It's random. I drove up and it died like in the hotel roundabout right there. And so luckily they had a charger to jump it off right there. But so I just went straight to go get a new battery. We dropped off the luggage and then I just went straight to go get a new battery. And as I was going, Father Dat called. And he was just so excited, and like we had done some music at the AYC, I guess, already, and he had heard it. He was there. I don't know if he was doing confessions or what. He was there, and he was like, oh, it's so good. We need this kind of music at, I think he just, in his welcoming, positive Father Dat kind of way, he just said, we want you to be a part of what we're doing. And so I said, okay, I'll think about it. I'll consider it. So it was awesome. It was really awesome. It has been awesome, really, to be here. And it's just been such a great experience so far, meeting the people and visiting and diving in.
Now, you're still living closer to St. Anthony of Padua right now because your kids are still in school.
Yeah. So I'm in Spring still, and the kids are closer to the school they're going to there. So I think we're going to be there for a minute, and
so but you're going to take that drive.
And it's not bad. I mean, 45 is right there, and I'm not 45, 99 is right there, and I'm on my way.
That's freewheeling, just going up. Yeah. So for the meantime, because they're a couple of years coming up on college, so who knows what's going to happen
so
then.
So talking about A&M, to my LSU heart is broken, but she's in at A&M.
Are you pushing LSU on her?
Yeah, but she won't hear it. She won't have anything to do with it. Yeah,
really?
I don't know what the deal is. It's far. She likes to be close to home. She does, and we like to have her close to home. If I could have her go to school in the backyard, I would do that. So A&M, and Sutton's got 2 more years for Sadi. So so we'll be a minute there, but it's not bad, man. It's really not a bad drive, and it's good. It's good prayer time, and it's good alone time, And then when I get where I'm going, I'm ready. I'm ready to go, ready to get started. So,
are either of your kids musically inclined?
Yeah, they both have been in lessons, piano lessons, since 5, 6, since very early on. And they love to play. Well, Sophie got bit pretty early by the music bug.
What does she play?
She plays piano. She's very good. She can run circles around me in music theory.
Really?
I mean, circles. Yeah. Sometimes she'll get started talking about things and she just loses me. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about anymore. She's really good with like harmonics and just some of the deep theory stuff. And
she play guitar too?
No, but Sutton has ventured out. He's a good pianist as well. His theory's very good as well. But he's ventured out into ukulele and guitar, and so. So a lot of times now, a lot of nights we'll find ourselves in the studio at home, and he'll pull up YouTube or Spotify and then Ultimate Guitar or one of these websites that just gives you all the chords.
Yeah.
Which drives me insane because I had to figure all that out on my own. I had to sit there with the tape player, play, and then figure out the...
Yeah, it's like, that doesn't sound right.
Is it A minor? What is it? Yeah, no, it's all right there. So anyway, so he does. So sometimes a lot of our nights are filled now with, just jam sessions in the studio with Ultimate Guitar and Spotify going. So
that's cool.
It's a lot of fun.
Are we going to hear the kids on any of your songs anytime in the future?
Well, I do occasionally. I record them because some of the stuff that we're doing requires like a small choir or a background vocal or something. So I pulled Sophie in just a couple of nights ago because I needed a harmony for something, and she was like, "Sure, I'll do it." She's always a willing candidate, so she jumped in. And
how about your wife?
She took piano lessons for 18 years, and she just. And she won't play anything for us anymore. She's like, no, I don't know how to play. She can, but she won't do it.
She's like me. I'm the least talented of the family. Tell her I know what it feels like. Yeah. Tell her I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
People are like, yeah, you're pretty good. I'm like, not compared to the other people in this family.
Yeah, you've got a musical family. So you've got one that's today, right? He's got a
Yes, he's got a
stage?
performance. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, and our daughter also took up some music as well, and my wife is just extremely talented. Now,
Yeah. Oh, she is. Yeah.
you talked earlier about, you put a second mortgage on your home to do that first album, and then you also said something about a Kickstarter campaign. Do you still have to do that for any future albums, or you still?
Well, what I try to do now is use I try to use monies from sales of previous records. So Outpoured, this latest one, is our 8th studio project, if you count the 3 separate mass parts settings. So 8 studio projects, and those sell over time. That and I'm able to kind of put money aside for the next project. So it just kind of goes into a fund, and then I just reuse that to re-record. The days of making a CD for, printing a CD for $2 and selling it for 15, those are over. Those are gone. So that's usually how the next project is funded. And OCP occasionally will act as a label as well, and so in some instances they'll provide money for recordings as well. So it just depends on the project and some of the variables there. But yeah, early on, that first project getting started, it was like, man, I had no idea it cost this much to record music.
At the time, how much was it?
I think we spent 25 on the first, just on the recording, 25,000 on the first recording, and then we still had to spend a few thousand on the actual printed material, right? You had to buy the CDs and all that stuff. So
did you have to rent out studio time at that time, or did you buy the equipment?
Well, that's all the producer. No, that's all the producer's role. So so it's $25,000, and you hand that to the producer. It's like buying, it's like building a house. You hand it over to the contractor, and you go, okay,
and they
make it happen.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and we trusted, and it was a beautiful experience for us. And now, and just in time, kind of learning a lot of that stuff on my own over the last 20 years, I'm able to do that for others, and kind of map that out and budget things out for people. And so in the production stuff that I do, that's some of the. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm finishing a master's in right now. Just talking about some of these exact things, like the business portion of it, and how this all budgets out, and why it costs so much money, and why it's so expensive, and then how do you recoup some of that stuff now in a time where it's you can't sell a $15 CD.
Yeah.
So what do you do? So anyway, some of those things are just. That's where we are now.
Has it become a little easier to produce now that a lot of the equipment has become a little more affordable? Over the past, 10,
I would say it's
years?
become easier for the average person to produce than it was, 10 or 15 years ago. Now, if you ask me if it's easier to produce well, I don't think that's the case. I still think it takes talented people with the right ear to do that.
Of course,
I'm just amazed by some of the people that do what they do, and the sounds that they create. Just naturally, like without the help of plugins or without the help of, as in music production, we often talk about, it starts at the source. The sound starts at the source. So if your kick drum sounds like a fluffy bag of pillows, well, that's the way it's going to sound when you record. And you can EQ it, and you can produce it until you're blue in the face, and manipulate it however you want, but it still is just a fluffy bag of pillows. But if you start with a nice sound. Anyway, I'm nerding out on this, but I love it. I think getting authentic sound at the beginning is important, and it's I'm amazed by some of the producers and super talented people who can do that, and I don't think everybody can. But it is easier than ever to get close to that. Yeah.
Now, you did say something earlier about, not being able to sell CDs. What is the best place for them to find your music if somebody wants to, to hear your stuff?
Thanks for asking that. Well, so joshblakeslee.com, it's all available there, but it's all on the streaming service. So if you're an Apple Music, or if you're a Spotify person, or an Amazon, it's all available on those things. And then we try to put everything up on YouTube as well. And
which one gives you the best, royalties in terms of, kind of helping you out financially?
That's a good question. Probably, I would say either Apple Music or Spotify, probably, or Amazon, one of those. it's a little more difficult, I've found, to monetize on YouTube. But with YouTube, it's visual, and there's more things, there's more candy, I think, So we try to provide that as well through YouTube. So not just live action videos, which we've done for Beautiful Is Your Love, but also lyric videos for all the songs, and then different ways to represent the same song, through videos. So
Are there any karaoke versions out there as well that?
Well, we get tracks for all that. We get instrumental tracks every
Yes.
time we mix. We get instrumental tracks, so they're somewhere. They're on a hard drive. They exist.
Oh, so you haven't released any karaoke versions yet?
No, but maybe that's next. Maybe we should do that. We should put some karaoke. Yeah.
Now, if let's say there's a teenager out there right now,
Yeah.
who's got a guitar behind the piano and thinking, hey, I want to write music for God as well. What advice would you give to them?
Oh, wow. Well, the first thing I always say to people and I like when I'm at an NCYC, or when I'm at an event, a conference, or a youth, a parish event or whatever, when we're doing these events, and I often have teens come and approach me and say, man, I sing, and I'd love to do, how do I, that question, what you just posed. Mm-hmm. And what I always say first is pray. I think that's the most important thing that we can do especially in Christian music. I think that's true for any type of music, anything that you want to do. I think God is real, therefore our relationship with Him has to be in place in order for us to do what He's asking us to do, what He's calling us to do. So I think that's first and foremost, particularly in Christian music. I mean, obviously we've got to have a relationship with Him. We've got to be in daily prayer to be able to sing music about Him. And then the next thing I would say is practice, like with all of your time, with all of your spare time, just dive in. If you're not practicing, then you should be. And if you're eating, then finish eating and go practice. Because I think it's just if you want to be in music, there is always somebody. If you're a guitarist, there's always a better guitarist, and so go find them and learn what they're doing. That's it. I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I never really mastered one instrument. I just learned them all, and kind of, and so I think for like some of the studio players that I play with, or that I hire to do production work, I watch some of those guys and I am amazed by what they do with their instruments, So if that is what you want to do, then focus on that. So that would be the last little bit, I would say, to kind of hone in on one particular thing. Like, is it singing that you want to do? Is it guitar playing? Is it piano playing? Is it organ? What is it? And dive into that specifically. So I don't know. I think sometimes people ask that question and they want a magic answer, or maybe they're looking for, how do I become famous, or how do I become, and I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what that is, and I wonder that I don't think that we should even be looking for that, really. I think we should be asking what is it that God wants us to do, and who does He want us to be, and how do we achieve that?
Do you ever go to a parish and then you hear a great vocalist or hear a pianist do something so well, and you just have to tell them, hey, you've got a real gift there? Do you ever go up to them and just say, don't stop doing this?
I do, yeah. I do try to do that. When I'm moved by a particular, anybody in the performance arts, because I'm a fan of comedians. I love comedians. I just think it takes a huge amount of guts and a huge amount of talent to be able to stand up in front of people with nothing but a microphone and try to make them laugh. I mean, oh my gosh, that's got to be the hardest job in the world. And there are people that do it really, really well. So anybody in the performance arts, like I try to make it a point if I'm moved by something specifically, then I'll go and I'll tell them. I'll make it a point to tell them, much to my family's chagrin sometimes, but but I will. I'll go and do it. And even sometimes when, like if there's a high school performance that I'm at, or if there's if sometimes I'm watching kids do what kids do, and maybe it's not the greatest thing that I've ever seen, obviously, because they're kids or whatever, but
they're still honing their craft.
But you can see the talent and the desire in it, and that's what I try to really encourage that as much as I can. Yeah, because it's beautiful, and it takes courage to get up and do that.
We did a music session. Somebody from St. Anthony of Padua, Allison Acompagnado, and
Yeah.
I'd never heard her before that, but Matt, who's the music director there at the Epiphany, said, "Oh, she sings with Josh Blakesley and St. Anthony of Padua. I'm telling you, you gotta go." So okay, I'll take your word. And she sang for us, and we were just blown away.
Yeah,
Just
she's awesome.
Just amazing. Do you ever look back and think, wow, I can't believe I've worked with all this great talent?
Yeah. Well, Matt's great too, and Matt's awesome, and Allison is amazing, and I stay in touch with Allison because she's one of those rare gifts. She can sing anything, and make it sound absolutely amazing. Yeah, I think generally speaking, and I try, like when I YouTube stuff, like I nerd out on I'm nerd out on music stuff, really. I try to find players who are really good, or producers who are really good, or artists, who sing really well, and I geek out on that stuff. And when I get to be in an enclosed space with them, like when I'm in the studio with some of these guys record, I'll go to Nashville a lot to record, and I try to use session players who are at the top of their game doing what they do, and and some of these guys have played with some of the, they've played on some of the albums that we hear every day on the radio, and I'll just sit in awe of the whole thing, that I'm in the room, number one, and number two, that these people are able to do things with their instruments that I can't even imagine how, I just can't figure out how they do it, how they hear it, and then how they make their fingers do, how it goes from, brain neuron flashes or whatever to notes on a page or sounds in my ear. It's just really, the whole thing is it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Now that you're a music director, you've done it in St. Anthony, here at St. Faustina. Does the administration part get to you? Is it a lot of a challenge?
It is. That's probably the biggest challenge. Today, as a matter of fact, this morning, I was, I'm hammering through. I try to start every morning with a list of things to do, and sometimes I didn't get done from the previous day's list, and so I'll copy it over to the new day's list, and as I'm crossing things out, it'll get halfway through the day, and I'll look at the page and I'll go, I haven't played music. I haven't played music. I've got to play music. And so that's kind of my thing every day is yes, administrative stuff. Yes, we want to get, all the names in Planning Center, and we want to get all the music uploaded, and we want to get songs out to all the people so everybody knows what they're supposed to sing, what they have to sing, and, and who's singing what and all of that. But before the day's end, I've got to play notes. I have to do that because it's just, otherwise I'm just administrating, and and I'm not getting better at what I do. So that's important, I think, for me to spend time every day just honing the craft. I think it's important. And sometimes, so I set up camp kind of in the rehearsal room where we rehearse, so my desk is in there. And when I was moving in there, Joffrey came over and he said, do you mind if I come over and practice sometimes? No, yeah, you should definitely do that. You're not gonna bother me at all. If we don't do that, yeah, then something's wrong. We got to get in there for a half hour at least and just let the piano sing a little bit, or whatever it is.
Now, in terms of the music that you release, what do we have to look forward to coming up?
Yeah, well, so we've been all systems go on Outpoured. So that's the newest project. With Outpoured, we're focused on "Beautiful Is Your Love" right now, and letting folks know about that song again, and this being the diocesan revival for the Eucharist, and next year being the parish revival for the Eucharist, really honing in on that idea of of Jesus' presence in the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ present in what looks like bread and wine, and that whole mystery. And so that's why Beautiful is Your Love is so important. Jesus, I Trust in You, some of the songs off of this project. And then as we get closer to Easter, we'll start hearing more about the song Alleluia, Sing to Jesus, which is on that project as well, which we'll be doing here for Easter, Alleluia, Sing to Jesus. It's kind of a new, again, just a representation of a song that we've all heard several times, but with a new refrain and orchestrated with strings and horns and a choir and the whole deal. So I'm excited about that song, especially off this project, because it was such a major production. It was such a major production between bass, drums, and guitar, and a few background vocals. Allison sang on that, by the way. And then organizing the choir to sing on that, organizing, having the orchestral parts done by my friend Tim Lenhart, who's a super talented guy, trombone player, and having him do his horn, just all the orchestration is just it was such a major production. I think we used over 200 tracks, just like
wow,
just getting that song.
Wow.
It was a beast. Even in Pro Tools, just scrolling through tracks and tracks of music, voices and bunches of horn parts and string parts, and so it was a major undertaking. But I love the result. I think the result came out great.
Do you still sell physical CDs, or is it all digital now?
With Outpoured, it's all digital. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So find it on those places that you said earlier.
Yeah.
Apple Music, Amazon,
joshblakesly.com. All those places. Yeah. And same thing for events, as I'm still doing events. I'm here at the parish a lot, and it's kind of number one for me now, but I am still traveling and doing lots of events and conferences and concerts and stuff. So yeah.
So via the website if they want to book you for that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Josh, for taking the time out of your busy schedule and sitting down with us and telling your story.
Oh, I'm grateful. Thanks for giving me opportunity. Thank you, Rudy.
And I'm sure that friend of yours is smiling down on you with all the work that that she planted that seed. Yeah.
Amen.